All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining today's webcast. And of course, the topic for today is all about disaster recovery. So we are going to talk about disaster recovery as a service. We'll talk about 15-minute failover and how you can achieve that if you don't have that yet. And all of the trending topics of what you need to know now when it comes to disaster recovery. And my name is Carla Federico. I'm the Director of Marketing here at Infrascale. And to give you just a bit of background, Infrascale was named a leader in disaster recovery as a service in the Magic Quadrant in 2017. We were also named Best in Show at IT Nation 2017 and designated Best Ransomware Solution by Redmond Channel Partners. So everything that I'm going to share today, you definitely don't have to take my word for it, but our solutions have been vetted and verified by the experts. Now, a few quick housekeeping announcements. I wanted to let you know that this session is going to be recorded and will be shared with you. So if at any time you want to come back to the presentation to hear any additional info over again, you'll have access to that. So keep an eye out on your email so that you have that replay video. And then second, there is a question tool. If you want to type anything into me, there's a Q&A there. So you can always reach out at any point during the presentation. I'll also share a PDF of these slides with you so that you have access to all this info. All right, so with that, here's my contact info as well. So please do reach out to me or connect if you'd like. I love chatting and hearing from all of you. And if there are any questions after the presentation, please do feel free to ask as well. But let's take a look at the agenda for today. So we're going to talk about data loss and DRAS, get a really good understanding of what components are going to go into that, the different types of features and functionality of different DRAS solutions, and why, first off, why DRAS is your best contingency plan against data loss, and then take a look at some of the important features that you want to be looking at. So what you want to be asking a provider. Right, and then we'll look at the Infrascale solution. So I definitely want to introduce that to you and give you a better understanding of what Infrascale does and how it works. All right, so we are going to start by taking a look at threats to business continuity and looking at these threats that Infrascale addresses as well. So we are going to talk about the loss of data due to file and folder data loss, which is very common. We're going to look at data hijacking, like ransomware. We hear these threats on the news all the time, so that's really important to address. And then also business downtime by having systems and servers go down. So really, when we look at these different threats to business continuity, there are going to be both those macro and micro type of disasters. So be it something that happens very frequently, for example, the file and folder data loss, that might be due to hardware failure, software failure, human error, all the way up to those macro disasters when something like a natural disaster, a hurricane, a tornado, a flood comes into play. So we will look at all of that. And then next, let's look at the cost associated with downtime. So it's downtime that really cripples a business. It's not necessarily that data in and of itself, but the cost can be extremely significant because of an outage. And that cost is going to scale with the size of the business. It could cost several hundreds of thousands of dollars for large organizations. Now, of course, it just depends on the size of the business. The average cost per hour of downtime is over $200,000 per year. Now, for a small to medium business, it might be something around $8,000 to $10,000 per hour is the average. And then for large organizations, for enterprises, the cost can scale up to $600,000 per hour of downtime. And so the question there is simply, can we afford that risk? And if you are a small or medium business, then even an hour of downtime could put you out of business. maybe a large organization could have the funds, but it's simply a question of, are we willing to take that risk? And anytime we've looked at traditional disaster recovery, you're always going to have a trade-off. So cost is always going to be involved, right? And what we're looking at here with traditional DR is cost along the bottom here. We're taking a look on the x-axis at the cost versus the recovery time, or RTO, the recovery time objective, right? And data backup in DR essentially used to just be one and the same, and that was offsite tape backup, right? So if the system went down, you'd have to get the tape and rebuild and restore that way. This solution would take several days at best, generally up to several weeks, depending on the type of disaster. And of course, it was the most cost effective, right? The least expensive solution. And from there, get this animation going here, then came cloud and appliance-based backup systems. Similar idea, but more modern technology, right? You'd recover the data, you'd recover the systems, and then you would need to rebuild and restore the systems to get the end users back up that way. So if we look at this trade-off, the recovery time improvement here was from days to hours, but then of course it's more costly as well. So if you have need for a quicker recovery time, you need to recover in minutes or seconds, then you would need to move to having a second data center. And that second data center might be a cold site, a warm site, or a hot site, each costing more and more, but bringing your recovery time to seconds or minutes instead of hours or days, right? The problem with traditional disaster recovery to date is that trade-off between RTO and cost. So for each improvement level in RTO, your cost goes up substantially. And if you're a large organization, maybe you can afford that. But if you're a medium enterprise or small to medium business, you just do not have that budget. So the question has always been, is there a way to offer disaster recovery functionality at the cost of backup? So now the answer is yes. DRaaS, or Disaster Recovery as a Service, is a solution that can bring your recovery time down to mere seconds without the excessive cost associated with something like, for example, a cold site, a warm site, or a hot site. But we do know that not all DRaaS solutions are created equal. So that's why we're also going to be looking at and talking today about what are those critical questions to be asking a DRaaS provider to really ensure that you know exactly what is being provided and then exactly what you're able to control. So if we take a look at the typical business, we see that what we're looking at here is business, critical business applications and servers. And those critical systems generally are going to be backed up with a proper DRaaS solution so that you have the ability to fail over. So generally speaking, when we look at those mission critical applications, they are protected in a typical business. However, we then look at remote workers, branch offices, endpoints, laptops, desktops, tablets, and we see that these are left exposed, either completely exposed or improperly protected. Not to mention cloud applications. When it comes to O365, Box.com, these are going to be left exposed as well. And so what we see with a typical business is that generally speaking, because of this, a piecemeal solution is needed. So it's going to require multiple products and vendors in order to properly protect all of that exposed data that we just saw. So what we find is that Infrascale has brought in 3 solutions in order to completely protect a business environment and business data. So Infrascale Disaster Recovery is going to completely protect business applications and servers, while Infrascale Cloud Backup is going to come into play for those remote workers, branch offices, endpoints when it comes to laptops, desktops, and tablets. And for all those cloud workloads, Infrascale Cloud Application Backup is going to be able to protect those. And we'll take a closer look at that in just 1 minute. We'll come back to that here. But what we've seen in those trade-offs that we looked at just a moment ago, right? For example, the recovery time objective versus cost. We saw that traditional approaches to backup and DR simply don't work the way that we need them to, or if they do, they can't achieve the cost the structure that we need. So DRAS is going to come into play to replicate and protect an entire environment and let you quickly fail over your systems, so not just files and folders, but fail over entire systems to ensure uptime and ensure availability when something goes wrong, any type of micro or macro disaster. But we looked at those different ways to completely protect a business, be it those cloud workloads, be it endpoints, laptops, or those critical business applications. But there are many different ways to define a data protection solution. There are going to be various ways to back up and recover critical systems and data. Organizations are going to have different security and compliance requirements. And then there are different levels of flexibility and backup targets and recovery options. And we haven't even looked yet, we will look a little bit later, but we haven't even looked yet at how to control failback procedures and orchestration policies. So essentially what we need to look at is a complete and comprehensive data protection solution, and we need to do that affordably. So what we're going to look at is, specifically, I'll introduce how the Infrascale DRAS solution works, but you also want to look at which items are important to take into consideration when you're selecting a DRAS provider. So the subhead here on this slide that we're looking at, right, is to learn how to eradicate downtime and data loss. And I've included that because that's our mission here at Infrascale. It's a very short and simple mission in terms of the phrase, right? Eradicate downtime and data loss. But what's not simple is actually making that happen. So again, what we want to look at is not only how the Infrascale DRAS solution works, but how that compares with other solutions, and bring to light those important questions and those critical components in the features and functionality of a solution, so that you know that your business is not only properly protected, but completely protected. So with that in mind, I mentioned a moment ago, we're going to look a little bit closer at the Infrascale solution, but let's look at those products essentially that we were looking at on that last page: Infrascale Cloud Backup, Infrascale Cloud Application Backup, and Infrascale Disaster Recovery. These are our three solutions, all built into the Infrascale platform to deliver a comprehensive data and system recovery solution to our customers. So Infrascale Cloud Backup is that direct-to-cloud solution. It's oriented around data and bare metal image backup. This is typically going to be for those endpoints, for endpoint data protection, laptops, mobile devices. It's optimized for small to medium businesses and their servers, as well as those remote branch offices, remote workers, and mid-market companies. Infrascale Disaster Recovery is going to be a hybrid solution. It's going to include an on-premise component that we are going to see in a minute, as well as the cloud. So of course you'll be able to back up data, but it goes a step further in capturing full system images and then allowing you to boot and run those images on a local appliance or in the cloud, depending on what's needed. And then Infrascale Cloud Application Backup, what we've seen, we know that most cloud applications have limited retention policies, generally 30 days, right? And then that data is deleted forever. So we have unlimited retention. We can back up O365, SharePoint, OneDrive, G Suite, Salesforce.com, Box.com. That's just to name a few, right? You can recover individual mail items or entire mailboxes. And again, those limited retention policies are generally what get you and what most of us tend to de-emphasize. But we need to really take a look at not only is that data protected, but is that retention going to be sufficient for what we need, especially when it comes to compliance issues and different security regulations. We'll look at that a little bit later when it comes to compliance and all that. But next, let's look at an actual scenario. So we know DRAS is going to support DR to be on demand, push button failover, but let's really see how it works. So in this situation here are some end users working on their production systems. So to see how it works, let's go ahead and install the Infrascale Disaster Recovery solution. It's that hybrid cloud solution like I just mentioned on that last slide. So we've got the on-prem failover appliance that's going to be installed locally, and then we're also going to have that cloud component, right? So the on-prem appliance might be a virtual appliance or physical appliance, and then the cloud-based service like would run on any public or private cloud. Okay, so we capture the systems to the appliance. We are going to dedupe them to compress the amount of data that's stored, and then we're going to replicate those systems up to the cloud. So we've got two copies of those systems. One is locally on the appliance, and then one is centrally located on the cloud. If in an example here, a system outage or ransomware, right? If one system were to go down, the administrator could fail over to the local appliance and bring back the most recent point or replica of that system. And all of those users are going to continue working with that application or with that server. Now, that's just one scenario, and in all reality, that's the easiest scenario. But let's assume instead that there's a site-wide infection or attack. So that local appliance is no longer available. And that's okay. We're still going to use those same steps. We're going to roll back to a clean environment if it were the example of ransomware. We'll roll back to that clean environment. Otherwise, if it's simply an outage and we want to fail over, immediately to the cloud. So we can bring up a full virtual environment that replicates exactly what was on-prem, and those users are going to continue working by interacting with the cloud-based systems. And so this is really what Infrascale offers. It's a cloud DRAS solution. All of the backups are replicated off-site to allow for a much faster recovery, a cloud-based recovery, right, of entire machines so that the end users can continue to work while that production environment's repaired. We've done all the work behind the scenes to ensure that those applications will run properly in the cloud. Now, as far as the specifics, taking a quick look at everything that we do, what we can support, we protect any device, desktops, laptops across both Windows and Mac, mobile devices, iPhones, Androids, including MDM functionality, so mobile device management functionality built in, things like geolocate, remote wipe, geofencing. So this is really important when it comes to mobile device security, as well as being able to protect the data on those endpoints, especially with that rise of BYOD, the bring your own device movement, where a lot of employees are going to have corporate data on personal devices. So you can selectively remote wipe as well. So also including servers, both physical and virtual servers. We support physical servers running Windows, Unix, and Linux, virtual servers on VMware, Hyper-V, and KVM. And we support more than 100 different versions of operating systems. This is the broadest support footprint that you'll find in the industry today. And when we look at recovery targets, we can support any cloud or a prepackaged appliance as well. So you can use one of Infrascale's 15 global data centers, or you can use your own private cloud if you have your own infrastructure, or third-party clouds. Our software is going to run with Amazon Web Services, Google Cloud, Windows, Azure, IBM Cloud. And those 15 global data centers that Infrascale has are going to be located throughout the US, Canada, the UK and Europe, Asia, South Africa. So if there are any data sovereignty issues that come into play, we can address those as well. So this matrix really shows everything that we do and what we can support in one great view, where these columns are different devices that we protect, the rows are the use cases, and again, this is really the broadest support footprint that you'll find. Now, we haven't yet talked about security and compliance, and we definitely want to take a look at that, right? So for those of you who are looking at specific data privacy and security issues, we take security very seriously, and your data is encrypted at 256-bit AES locally. It's sent over an SSL, and then encrypted again at 256-bit AES at rest. And if you want to take it a step further, we do have an additional option with UltraSafe Max. So you not only define the password, but you can define the encryption key itself. And when it comes to compliance and certification, our solution is going to comply with HIPAA, SSA 16, FINRA, SOX, CGIS, and many more as well. So if you are subject to any of those regulatory frameworks, you do want to ask that question of your provider. So again, just going back to what are those really critical components in those different DRAS and DR solution providers. When it comes to business continuity and when it comes to data protection, these are really important questions that you want to be asking to understand exactly how that solution works. Now, most importantly, I mentioned that our mission is to eradicate downtime and data loss. What I haven't yet mentioned, which is the most important component of today, and if you only take one piece of information away from today's webinar, it's that we offer a 15-minute failover guarantee. And that's not something that you can find anywhere in the industry today. So that 15-minute failover guarantee is something that is definitely a differentiator, and you want to be talking to your solution provider, no matter what solution you choose, about a type of a guarantee. And not only that, because most providers won't be able to provide any type of guarantee at all, but a time constraint on that, 15 minutes. So when we talk about RTO and RPO, so not only the recovery time objective that we saw earlier, but recovery point objective, or RPO, these are really critical questions, and you want to take a look at those components. So let's look at how we do this. So first off, let's take a look at the Infrascale dashboard. So everything is going to be managed through a single pane of glass. So that's going to be Infrascale Disaster Recovery, Infrascale Cloud Backup, and Infrascale Cloud Application Backup. It's all going to be managed through the Infrascale dashboard, which you can access from any browser at any time. And you'll have access to not only activity alerts, reporting and monitoring, account usage, but you're also going to have access to our anomaly detection technology, orchestration technology, and much more. But let's just take a look at a couple pieces of the Infrascale dashboard just a little bit more closely. So the first piece of technology that I wanted to look at within our dashboard is anomaly detection. And this is so important because it comes into play with ransomware attacks. Now, what we're doing with anomaly detection is we're monitoring the backup activity and looking at patterns existing in data change. So we're looking at, in other words, how frequently that data is changing. We know that when ransomware gets into your system, it's going to go through your system. It's going to modify all of the files that it touches. So if it's a file that you're backing up, we are going to recognize it as a changed file. And in this analysis, we're monitoring the normal number of changed files per day. Now, if we suddenly see a spike where a much larger number of files have been changed, then an alert is going to be released to the admin. So we can proactively see the threat of data encryption by hackers before the ransom's ever even posted or demanded. So when we send that alert out to the admins, you can also set the threshold here, right? In this case, we have it set to 4 times the number of files being changed. But you can set that threshold however you need to. And when that alert is sent out to an admin, you obviously then detect the issue before the threat hits to those end users. You can then roll back to a clean data environment much faster, obviously far less data loss, and avoid paying those really high ransoms. And this is really critical because most of those BDR solutions out there today don't have this proactive warning system. Maybe they'll try to say, you know, we can tell you that we can't detect the issue, we can try to remediate it afterward, but we're able here to do both, detect the issue and remediate it. So this is a really critical component to data protection today, and an important question that you want to be asking your solution provider. Now, another key component to data protection is orchestration. And this is a key differentiator in DR solution providers, right? We want the orderly recovery of a server environment. And orchestration is going to ensure that critical servers, applications, and devices are all coming online in the proper sequence based on their dependencies. So it's going to allow you to completely restore your networking configuration on the DR site as well. Now, we have this visual designer for drag and drop orchestration functionality. It's built right within that dashboard, where you can see a page under our boot tab. You see a page for orchestration, a list of all the bootable machines along the side, and you can drag them over to your diagram design surface, and then from there, rearrange them, add wait times in between boots if you need a delay in between boots. You can create boot groups to run together or separately, some machines that are more critical than others, and you want to prioritize them. So here, this is really critical functionality. And then you can also specify network configuration settings for these machines. If you can see on the screen here, the LAN configuration, you can specify the subnet, gateway, DNS servers, DHCP range. You can enable or disable outbound internet access. So this is really critical functionality. No matter what DR solution you choose, it's important to understand exactly how that solution plans to fail over your applications and then fail back, in addition to how much customization and control you have in that whole orchestration process. So again, just critical questions to be asking your provider. Now, Infrascale is a subscription service. So when we say DRaaS and we talk about disaster recovery as a service, what we mean by that is that it's truly an as-a-service solution. It's a subscription that's all-inclusive. So there are not going to be any add-ons in addition to the one low monthly subscription cost, which means you don't have any add-ons for testing. You have unlimited testing available. There aren't going to be any add-on services or professional service fees for that. The maintenance is also going to be included. We offer 24/7 support. And that's US-based support. Half of our team is based in Los Angeles, and the other half is based in Salt Lake City. And then maintenance is going to be included on the device as well, on that appliance component. There are no additional or excessive professional service contracts. You are able to untether your cloud storage from that local storage, and we use intelligent cloud spillover, when that appliance is full to spill that data over to the cloud. And then we don't have any additional or hidden fees afterwards. So when I say that it's an as-a-service solution, I truly mean that it is as a service. And the payment structure for that subscription, it's simply based on the amount of data that you have to protect. So it's based on the number of terabytes and then nothing else. Now here is a great look at the overall scale. Now Infrascale, a little bit about us as a company, was founded in 2012. Our headquarters is in Los Angeles. And we are active in over 170 countries. So each red dot on this map is going to display a business that we protect. We have 15 globally dispersed data centers all around the world. We are protecting over 55,000 companies and over 1 million devices worldwide. Now, when I say that we offer fully comprehensive and complete data protection, here's what I mean by that. We can protect any type of hybrid environment. So on the left, we're taking a look at the source side, right? Protecting physical and virtual servers, applications, workstations, and endpoints, not to mention cloud workloads with Infrascale Cloud Application Backup. And that's all managed through one pane of glass through our Infrascale dashboard. And then if we look at the right-hand side, the target side, you can utilize Infrascale Cloud, those 15 global data centers, your own private cloud, public cloud, or that prepackaged appliance that I mentioned as well. So it truly is a complete data protection platform. And this is a great way to look at essentially everything that we do in one slide, right? But most importantly is the 15-minute failover guarantee, is that Infrascale can guarantee system failover from any type of disaster, be it a micro or macro disaster, in 15 minutes or less. So I mentioned earlier, but if there's simply one thing that you take away from today's presentation is that we're able to deliver that 15-minute guarantee for any type of disaster, micro or macro. And I know we've covered a lot of information today, and we've talked quite a bit about not only the different types of data loss, different threats to business continuity. We've talked about downtime, the cost per hour of downtime, and what that can do to a business. We've looked at traditional DR trade-offs between recovery time and cost and what that means to a business. And we've looked at different solutions in terms of what questions need to be asked to your solution provider to ensure that you have a comprehensive data protection solution in place. And we've also looked at the Infrascale solution, Infrascale Disaster Recovery, Infrascale Cloud Backup, and Infrascale Cloud Application Backup. So with all this in mind, I not only want to thank you for taking the time and joining the presentation today, but I want to open up the conversation. So reach out to us, and you can email us at team@infrascale.com. You can also follow us on social. You can follow us on LinkedIn, YouTube, where we have plenty of how-to videos as well as informational videos like this one. You can find us on Twitter, and you can also find us on Facebook. Again, if you'd like to email, the email is team@infrascale.com. And I'd like to open up that conversation with you on social media as well. So if you would like to participate or have a one-on-one demo, if you'd like to take advantage of a free trial, we would love to get you started with the Infrascale solution and really test it out for yourself. So if you'd like a one-on-one demo or a free trial, simply email us at team@infrascale.com. or reach out on social via LinkedIn, via Twitter, Facebook, or YouTube. So thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciated having everyone here on the line, and I very much look forward to speaking with you in the future and working together. Thank you for your time, and have a great day.